Growing up, I was always fond of the woods. I grew up on a small town on Vancouver Island, surrounded by dense evergreen forests. My best friend at the time lived in a co-op at the edge of the forest, and after school, me and my friends would frequently jump over the fence to explore what lay behind these woods. We would trek through this forest on an almost daily basis, and we soon found out that despite having next to no actual trails, this forest would seemingly connect parts of the small town that we lived in to other parts that would otherwise require a car. We could pop out of the forest to the local pool or the developing subdivision across town. At the time, I was too young to fully understand why our parents were so adamant about us not stepping foot into this forest, but with the knowledge that I have now of the extensive missing persons cases in BC, as well as the feet that were mysteriously washing up on shore at the time, yeah, our parents had a pretty valid reason to be worried about us. The first time we ever hiked through this forest, we all got hopelessly lost. Not for very long, mind you, but long enough that some of our friends didn't want to step foot in the forest ever again. We exited the forest on a road with no sidewalks in the middle of nowhere and had to follow the road back home. Luckily, most of the cars were heading in one direction. We figured that way was home and ended up back in town. But if we had gone the other way, or there was no traffic, who knows how long we would have been lost for. But something kept drawing me and one other friend in that group back into those woods. And from that time, we quickly learned two things. One, how to leave a trail. And two, how to find civilization if you lose that trail. Being lost forever in woods so dense that every turn you make seems indistinguishable from the last is, for many, the worst thing imaginable. For others, it's exactly what they want. I lie somewhere in the middle. It's not the woods that scare me. It's the unpredictable life that hides inside it, and the unsettling way that some sounds are amplified, and yet others, like human voices, become so dampened that you can hardly hear someone 10 feet away from you. The Ritual is a 2017 horror film that somehow manages to tick every single one of the boxes that turn the forest into something that I consider tranquil into one of my worst nightmares. The movie starts out with the five guys in a pub: Robert, Hutch, Dom, Phil, and Luke. They're having a few drinks, telling a few jokes when one of them suggests going on a boys' trip. The boys suggest a few places before Robert throws the idea of going on a hiking trip in Sweden on the table. And naturally he gets clowned for this because, like, what the fuck do we look like? We're in a pub and you're suggesting a hiking trip? You know what? Just because you suggested that, you're paying for the bill tonight. So the boys leave the pub and they're discussing whether or not to go home or grab a bottle and continue the night on. And the group is pretty split. But Luke manages to peer pressure Robert into going into the liquor store, grabbing a bottle and continuing the night on, while the other guys decide to go home. So Luke and Robert head into the liquor store and they're browsing through the aisles when all of a sudden, I don't know why I love this scene so much. It's probably how fast the tone shifts or how little I expected this to happen on my first watch through. But it turns out the guys walked into a liquor store right as the workers in the back were getting robbed at knife point. Yeah. This movie's British if you couldn't tell. So Luke manages to hide behind an aisle divider before the robbers can see him, but Robert gets caught standing in the middle of the aisle. The robbers take Robert's wallet, his watch, and they try to take his wedding ring before he starts refusing. The crooks are getting impatient, and Robert ends up catching a machete with his nose. Look man, I like this movie. I think it laid a lot of the groundwork for a movie like Midsommar to really succeed the way it did. Midsommar is also, from a cinematography standpoint, my favorite movie of all time, but that might be a review for another day. You'll also notice later that this movie has a lot of similar shots that loom for just long enough to make you feel uncomfortable. With all the praise I will give this movie though, I will not give praise to this death scene. This looks really bad. So Robert gets his face filleted and we cut to 6 months later, and the group wakes up in northern Sweden, camped out in a bunch of tents. The guys have planned on a 3-day hiking trip through Sweden as a way to honor their lost friend. They set up an altar with a little memorial for Robert, and they all have one last drink with him, and Hutch pours out the rest of the flask. Luke and Phil give Hutch a little look like, oh man, come on, I would've liked a little more of that, but okay. It's apparent from what Dom says that there's still a little bit of underlying tension between him and Luke, considering Luke was the one who asked Robert to accompany him into the liquor store with him, leading to his death. But that night, Luke and Hutch are talking, and they can see the lodge. Hutch tells Luke that this whole thing is not his fault, but that doesn't do much for Luke in the grand scheme of things. It's a real rainy morning and the guys are trying to pack their camp up. As someone who's done a lot of camping in the wet season, I've experienced this a lot. This fucking sucks. So the group continues on their hike, and a little while further, Dom sends his meniscus into the Shadow Realm. He says it's fucked, he can't walk on it anymore, so the group suggests they cut through the forest and make a beeline to the lodge. If they head southwest, in theory, they should be there by sundown, and Dom can get the medical attention he needs. Like I said earlier, this movie has a ton of long, creeping shots of these tall, spindly trees. It's super claustrophobic, even though it's a wide-angle shot. The group comes across this fucked up, gutted deer? Elk or something? I don't know. They know that the elk thing is still bleeding and that they should probably get out of there before whatever did that comes back. Nightfall comes around and so does the torrential downpour. They come across a cabin that seems to be abandoned and Dom is thinking rationally. He says, "This isn't our place, how about we don't break into it?" But he's overruled because the guys really want to get out of this rain. So they decide to use this cabin as shelter rather than pitching their tents. They kick in the door when Luke hears something in the distance. There's a bunch of effigies scattered around the house, and Luke is really sketched out about the noise that he heard in the woods, but Hutch tells him, "Yeah, you probably did hear something, man. We're not the only animals in the woods." Which is fair enough, I guess. So they're checking out the house, making sure it's secure, making sure, nobody's actually here. When Paul finds this weird altar? Shrine? I don't even know what to fucking call this thing. And the guys are rightfully freaked out by this thing, but not enough to leave the house. I'd get the fuck out of there. I'd get the fuck out of there. They talk about what this thing even is, what it could be, and what they're gonna do in the morning. The group is all still clearly shaken up about this thing, but they all still head to bed. That night, the group is plagued with bad dreams. Luke wakes up in the woods and he's bleeding from his chest. Hutch wakes up covered in his own piss. Dom is crying for his wife, and Phil... Well, Phil is upstairs with no clothes on, praying to the shrine. So all the guys grab their shit as fast as possible and leave the cabin. When they see a bunch of trees knocked over, and the trees that are still standing have patterns carved into them, the same pattern as the effigies that are scattered around the cabin. They were supposed to be out of the forest last night, and Dom is getting really impatient on his bummed knee. Hutch tells Dom to calm down, but after last night, Dom isn't having any of it. So he decides to follow the trail that just appeared outside their cabin this morning, saying paths lead to civilization. Phil wants to talk about the crazy shit that happened last night, but Hutch shuts it down real quick. He says they all just had nightmares and his only focus is getting out of this forest. Honestly, that's pretty fair. But Phil is convinced that it's something more than a nightmare and he never would have done something like that because of a dream. Dom sees stumps poking out of the ground cut in a specific way and says that they're man-made, so they must be getting somewhere. Fun fact, you can actually make super long-lasting torches by cutting pine trees this specific way and using the tar as fuel. I'll put a video up kind of explaining how they do this, but this is an old way of keeping things lit, keeping things warm, keeping things bright. The group comes across another cabin, but obviously, from what happened last night, they all decide they're not about that life anymore, so they just keep going. But they can only get a little farther before Dom's knee starts getting worse, and he tells the group to just hold up for a second so he can rest. Luke goes up to a ridge up the hill where they've all stopped to rest to see if there's an end to the forest in sight, but they're still in the middle of nowhere. He then sees something moving in the forest and runs back to tell the group. He shows them the weird puncture wounds he got from last night, and Dom just goes full sicko mode on him, telling Luke he believes all of this is his fault, from the death of Robert to them going to Sweden in the first place. The group is breaking down, and they just want to get out of the forest once and for all. So the group continues on, but they only get a little further before they discover an old tent with someone's wallet in it, buried underneath years of leaves and soil from the previous autumns. The group morale takes another punch as the ID in the wallet expired in 1984. But Hutch is still an optimist, convinced that they're in a better spot than ever. They have to be close to the end of the forest at this point, and they're going to be declared missing in 5 hours anyways, so they set up a camp for another night. Hutch at this point is just doing his best to keep the group together. Dom isn't in a good space physically, and Phil isn't in a good space mentally. So Hutch suggests that Luke take some supplies, take the compass, and says in the morning he should head off ahead of them to find help faster. Luke says okay, he'll do it, and the group heads to bed.
Okay. Good man, mate. Yeah.
But that night, the group has another fucked up dream? I don't even know. Back in the liquor store, but the aisle of the store is now bleeding into the forest when the robber with the machete looks up from Robert's lifeless corpse and calls Luke a coward. We then see there's something looming around in the campsite when something attacks Hutch's tent. Luke wakes up to Phil screaming that whatever has been following them around the forest was here. Hutch's tent was actually ripped to shreds, and there's a pool of blood in the tent where he was sleeping. They wake up Dom, and then they hear something run off into the woods, and a blood-curdling scream from Hutch. No, not that one. That one. Yeah, that scream is fucking crazy, man. Jesus. They run off into the night to find him, but they aren't going to find anything in this darkness. So unfortunately, they have to turn back to camp and look for him in the morning. And when they do go off to look for him in the morning, they find him.
Oh my God!
Torn up in a fucking tree. They take him down from the tree, and Dom wants to give him a proper burial, but the guys are worried that whatever did this to him will be back, but unwilling to leave him exposed to the elements. Dom at least says he has to cover him up. Now the group is having a discussion on what this thing even is. Dom is convinced that whatever is hunting them is human, that they're just some forest pagans, but Phil and Luke are convinced that whatever did that to Hutch and the elk was not human, adding the cabin that they slept in has probably been abandoned for years, and whatever Luke saw up by that ridge yesterday definitely wasn't human. They drink water from this disgusting river, get dysentery, and die instantly. And that's the end of the movie. Remember guys, the real danger in the forest is non-potable water. Remember to like and subscribe. Ah, fuck. I'm kidding. But what they do find by this dirty fucking river they all just drank from is tracks. Human footprints, matter of fact. And the group is like, yeah, no, fuck that. We're supposed to be headed southwest anyways, and that's not southwest. Southwest is up a massive hill. The guys are in rough shape, and the sun is going down again. Dom has a busted MCL, and Phil keeps having Nom flashbacks of that shrine he was praying to at the cabin. So once they get up this big hill, Luke decides to run up a little further to see if he can see anything. And when he gets to the top of the hill, he can see smoke from the lodge. Hutch was right. All they needed to do was continue southwest. But there are also a bunch of lights coming from the forest. And when he yells back to the boys, no one calls back. So Luke runs back down to find Phil. Phil says he heard something out in the woods and gets pulled away by that thing. Luke finds Dom in hiding and says whatever that thing is will be back for them soon. They're gonna have to run, even though Dom still has a busted knee. So they manage to run from whatever that thing is that's chasing them through the forest, and they end up on the lit path that Luke saw earlier. Along this path, they see Phil's body hung up in the trees. However, they can't stop because they're being chased, and out of pure desperation, they enter the cabin at the end of the trail. Inside the cabin is someone praying to a shrine who ends up knocking them out and chaining them up. The old lady gives Luke some water and pulls down his shirt to show the puncture wounds on his chest. The lady shows Luke that she has the same ones and they've scarred into the same pattern that we've been seeing carved into the trees and in the cabin. They take Dom away and another lady comes in and tells Luke that they're preparing for a sacrifice. When they put Dom back in the room with Luke, Dom tells Luke about the nightmare he had back in the cabin. Dom's nightmare was a premonition of him being offered to this thing in the woods. And he was calling for his wife because he saw visions of her before he died. Convinced that nightmare is about to become a reality, Dom tells Luke he's got to escape somehow. And when he does, he should burn this place to the ground behind him. And soon after, the cult takes Dom away for his sacrifice. They pull Dom out on this crucifix thing and they all kneel down before whatever is walking towards them in the woods. When out of the woods comes Dom's wife, Gail. She walks up to him without a word before the illusion wears off and Dom is staring into the eyes of something indescribable. Luke breaks his fucking thumbs to get out of the bindings, but it's a little too late. The thing drags Dom away and hangs him from the trees. I've been dying to make a joke. And I know I can't say it, man. They're gonna call me a race traitor or something. They're gonna take my impasse. This lady comes in to tell him that his ritual begins in the morning. Whatever that means, and tells Luke that the thing that's been killing people and hanging them from trees is a god called the Jotun, and it has granted this cult with immortality. To which Luke is like, nah, G, you can keep this lifestyle and like your forest deity to yourself. I'm trying to go home. But the lady was like, I don't think I fucking stuttered, my guy. When was this a question? And walks off. So Luke, with his broken thumbs, manages to get out of the bindings, and he escapes from the room that they were keeping him in. There's a bunch of weird noises coming out of this one room upstairs, and when Luke opens the door, all the noises stop. Inside this room is a bunch of old mummified people, and they start screaming, so Luke lights them on fire, and the whole house goes up like kindling. These motherfuckers are dry, oh my god. So Luke sneaks downstairs, and the old lady is blocking his path. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to guess what happens next. Got your answer? Luke fucking clocks this old lady, and it sends me every time I see it. Oh my god. He makes eye contact with her for like 2 fucking seconds, and then he just sends a mean left across her nose. The timing is perfect. They even cut off all the horror strings when she shows up to take away all the suspense. It's fucking perfect, man. I swear, this is just a scene out of a scary movie. Yeah, this is why I love British films. So Luke sleeps the Crypt Keeper and kills another guy before telling a third guy to drop his axe. But he drops it low for Jesus because the Jotun is right outside the burning building. So Luke grabs the axe and breaks through a burning wall like an absolute fucking unit and shoots the Jotun when it's not paying attention. I do want to add that this scene of the Jotun outside of the burning building is just fucking cool, man. It's probably my favorite shot in the entire movie, and it's one of the only full shots we see of the Jotun. Overall, I think the visuals of the movie are pretty good, aside from the one scene where Rob dies, but we don't need to talk about that. So yeah, Luke decides to shoot the Jotun, even though the lady 5 minutes ago told Luke this thing was a god, so you're probably not going to kill it with like a 227 round, but, you know, go off, King. The Jotun looks at Luke like, bro, did you really just do that? And chases him down, but Luke gets a vision of the fluorescent lighting inside the liquor store and runs down the path. But the Jotun is actually fast as shit and knocks Luke to the ground. The Jotun grabs Luke and it's off to the tree for you, sir. But Luke tries to wiggle free, and the Jotun gives him one more chance to kneel before him, but Luke won't do it. So the Jotun forces him, pushing Luke's face into the dirt, when Luke has another vision of Robert laying beside him. Luke grabs the axe and stands up one more time, and when the Jotun goes in to grab him, Luke cracks him over the head with the axe. This stuns the Jotun for just enough time for Luke to make a break for the tree line, and the Jotun stops where the forest ends and roars at Luke, which Luke yells back. I actually like this scene. I couldn't tell you why. It's really cheesy, but I don't know, I like it. So Luke has escaped the forest, and the last shot of the movie is of a road, and Luke walking towards it. Final thoughts? This movie is one of my favorites simply because of the correlation I have with growing up in the woods. Like I said, for the most part, I think the visuals are really good in this movie, and aside from, you know, the one death scene, I think the movie pulls it off really well. And the way this movie manages to flip the mood on a dime at multiple points throughout this movie keeps it very engaging. I really like this movie's take on the Jotun. Generally, they're just seen as kind of humanoid Norse giants. And while this version of the Jotun is definitely giant, I just think this depiction of this weird moose human hybrid monstrosity is just so much cooler than a big troll. And I think a lot of people feel the same way as me too, because when you Google Jotun now, most of the images you'll find are of the rituals version. I think it's also a lot more fitting to the lore of Loki, who, if you know, fancies himself a beast every once in a while. Kind of fucking weird mythology, you know? But Loki is also known to be a shapeshifter, which could explain the Jotun manifesting into Dominic's wife before he does. It's also said that the Jotun, or Jotnar, can conjure illusions that are strong enough to fool the gods of Asgard, which would line up perfectly with the liquor store hallucinations as well as all the fucked up dreams that the guys had. And I just think it's really cool that they took the actual lore of the mythical beings into account and built a story around them and old pagan rituals. It's a really good mix. The writing in this movie is also pretty good. Then again, I have a soft spot for British humor and writing styles, so maybe I am a little bit biased, but I fully recommend this movie. On the first watch, I thought the third act dragged on a little bit too long, but on subsequent watches, I really think that the third act really just flies by. The guys all feed off each other pretty well. Their reactions are all dry and snarky, and none of them really act too much like a character, for the most part. I'm gonna give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I really like it, and I come back to it probably once a year at least. It's a really good watch, but I'm not a movie critic. I'm just a dude on the internet. Before I go, I want to say thank you for all the support this month. This has been fucking crazy. I also have this big fucking wall space that's just blank, and it's boring. So if you guys have any ideas on what I should put on this wall, let me know, because look at this shit, man. I need a better setup than this. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.